What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Two Dads, One Controller, the podcast where the diapers are full, the coffee's gone cold, and the only thing more endless than the side quests in this game is the laundry. I'm Holden, joined by my fellow gamer and stealth assassination enthusiast, Perry. Today we're talking about Assassin's Creed Shadow. Ubisoft finally took us to Feudal Japan, but the big question is, did they deliver a masterpiece? How did the fans receive it? And is it a win for Ubisoft as a whole? So let's take a leap of faith together and jump right in.
Two dads playing late in the night. Video games, shine neon lights. Control the world, saving the day. Superheroes come out to play.
So first off, the hype for this game was unreal. For years, the community has been practically begging for an Assassin's Creed set in Japan. Ubisoft finally delivered with Shadows, and honestly, first impressions were strong. The reveal trailers blew people away, the visuals are gorgeous, and the setting feels rich and immersive. And Ubisoft did something interesting this time with two protagonists. On one side, you've got Yasuke, inspired by the real-life African samurai who served under Oda Nobunaga. On the other hand, you've got Naoe, who is a classic shinobi. That duality brought some excitement, but also sparked some debate amongst fans. Some fans felt Yasuke's presence was refreshing and bold, while others questioned how much historical creativity Ubisoft should have taken in this game. So now the big conversation online has been around the gameplay itself. Fans are split. Some are loving the refined combat and stealth, but others are feeling that Ubisoft's formula fatigue is setting in. The open world's massive, side quests are everywhere, and for players who are tired of checklist-style design, well, Shadows doesn't stray far from that. That said, personally, I've got to give Ubisoft credit. The game launched in a surprisingly polished state, unlike Unity. So no game-breaking bugs, no chaos on day one, and in an era where that's become rare, I believe they deserve kind of some kudos for that. And as far as the game's launch, talking some numbers, early reports showed that Assassin's Creed Shadows is one of Ubisoft's strongest launches in recent memory. Pre-orders were huge, sales are solid, the game's doing especially well in Japan and Western markets. Ubisoft themselves have already called it a commercial success, and you can bet we'll see some of the DLC in the future and more support down the line. But we kind of want to go to, Perry, I want to know, what are your initial impressions kind of as this game was announced all the way up to trailer reveals and all the way up to the release of the game?
Well, to preface this, I'm probably one of the biggest Ubisoft fans ever. Well, not ever, because I'm pretty sure there's somebody that's have a bigger fan than me. But I think, firstly, Unity's gotten a little more credit for, at the time, there wasn't really much games, if any, like that. Ubisoft was really the only ones making games like this. And Assassin's Creed Unity was like a step to where like no other game has really ever done, to have this massive real life open world game that you can play the story throughout with your friends. Granted, you didn't play through the story, you played through like the multiplayer story. So I think with them having bugs and stuff like that, I personally can look past that because that was something that literally no one's ever done. Like no one. So I think I can give Ubisoft some credit for that game. But to talk about Shadows, I think personally, I like the idea. I enjoy the idea of how they want to release it in Japan, and the characters they chose was bold and it wasn't safe. So I got to give them credit for that. Like, I'm not like some blind hater or something. But the issues with the game that I think that is requiring from the fans is just like issues that like just people in general just making up. Like, I don't know. It could be like a weird thing to go over, but I just think like most Americans care about things that other countries don't. You don't ever see Japan talking about, oh, well, America's not represented properly, blah, blah, blah. Long as it's not something that is completely like disrespectful to the culture, people don't understand there's this thing called creative liberties. So, like, I think most of the hate that some people are talking about towards this game is completely unjust. So, I think the game overall looks great in terms of, like, art design and stuff of that nature. The game looks great. The story, I'm still gotta completely get my head wrapped around that. But I think my initial responses to the trailers and everything, I didn't have any negatives. If anything, I was really hyped for it. So that's my opinions. What about you?
I think when the trailer was announced, I remember back in, I think before Unity, fans were talking about like we want it set in Japan. That would be so cool. And we were all just waiting for that. And then they would announce the next game. Oh, it's, the French Revolution. Oh, it's the Industrial Revolution in London. Oh, we're going back to Egypt and Greece and like Nordic legends. And I was
Yeah.
really, so when they announced this, first excited to finally get it. But then on the back end was worried that the timing of it, because we just had Ghost of Tsushima come out within the last couple of years, and that is a masterpiece of a game. And that in the same release window, like I think this summer, Ghost Yoten, if I'm saying that correctly, is the follow up to Ghost of Tsushima is coming out. So that's what this game's going to be compared to is
Yeah.
the Ghost of Tsushima. And I have my own kind of thoughts and comparisons between the two of kind of what I've thought about during my first few hours in it.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced Yote, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Who knows?
Um,
We'll get corrected at some point.
yeah. So the the game itself, the reason I don't want to go too into it. So l- let's talk about how are you enjoying the game? Let's go there.
So I bought it day one, and I'll just say my initial thought. I just checked. I've got 20 hours, 17 hours in the game
Hmm.
so far, and I think it was worth the price of admission. It's a polished game, which like believe what you want. It's sad to say that is could sometimes be hard to come by, especially with Ubisoft with their last Star Wars game, what Star Wars Outlaws or whatever it was, that did not launch well or have a good launch and is a failure. But in my initial, you start the game and you're playing as Yasuke, right? And these two characters are so different with their play style. Yasuke like doesn't do stealth. Like stealth is not, you can, but it's not nearly as
Effective.
effective, right, as it is with Naue, who's a shinobi. Like you start the game with Yasuke, and you're doing this kind of raid on this lord's house, right? So you're going through, and you're just like busting people up, and you're getting all the beheading and like cool animations and finishers. So the game
Hmm.
starts with that, and then you go and back to Naue, and you play with her or as her for I think I did get distracted, and I'll say what like ventured off on, but I played with her for about 12 hours, I think, before I unlocked Yasuke again to where I can switch between the two. So it's a decent split of you start as Naue, and there's these side missions where you reflect and meditate, and it goes back into her past where you know how she trained, how she got to where she is. And I think that is where the formula fatigue is. Like, oh man, she like Ezio, it happened to him in Brotherhood, right? When the opening, they had that big siege on the city, and he gets
Hmm.
hurt, is out of commission, and so the beginning of the game is like, oh, he's got to heal up for a long time. I think that's a tired like the Netflix show Blue Eye Samurai. Like a lot of like writers put that in plots where they get hurt and spend this long time recovering, and that's what happens in this game. Is like she gets hurt, like I won't spoil anything, but the team of combination of like lords and samurai and archers and whatever, I think there's like no 10 to 13 of them that you eventually hunt down,
Hmm.
mess her up, and then she goes into recovery. you know what I'll say? Mess her up, kill her dad, and then goes into recovery, and then it's a revenge story for her. And I'm so like the they started that with Ezio, right? And that was a good story. The whole Ezio trilogy was great, but I feel like that's just a tired of like, oh, I got hurt, so I'm going on revenge. That's where her story, I don't care. I don't really care that much about. She's fun to play as. She's good with stealth. There's new mechanics that were introduced in the game as far as grappling hooks, and not in the sense of Syndicate where you could shoot a grappling hook like up Big Ben and then, get wound up like a yo-yo. This is she throws a hook and climbs up, and that it makes climbing faster, even though like climbing's fast on its own with her because she's Shinobi. She's the fastest character out of any Assassin's game. Like her sprint is very fast.
Mhm.
She plays more like a rogue character where Yasuke is more of a warrior tank. Because, for example, just kind of the difference between these two characters is Naue is stealth focused, Yasuke is like fighting, dueling focused. Like Yasuke does not have eagle vision, for example. Like you can't tag enemies with Yasuke. You can't like see through walls to identify them, tag them.
Yeah.
His parkour is slow, very slow, and some you can't even like make the jump where Naue would make the jump no problem. His running speed is slower, even by horseback, he's slower.
Yeah.
These are just very different characters. So the traditional assassin is Naue, and that's how she plays. Like you feel like you're playing an Assassin's Creed game, and where Yasuke plays as a bonus for battling, because you could take on 5 enemies at once with Yasuke, especially with certain perks, and you'll be fine. What I do like about this game, I am enjoying Yasuke's story so far because the game, like I said, it opens with a siege, but he comes into the game and he's the slave of these 2 Portuguese priests that are just assholes, honestly. And these priests this is the prologue, go to this lord, Nobunaga, and ask him to give safe passage to their priests to go amongst the land, and spread the Christian faith. And during this scene, Nobunaga is like not having it, and you see him look off to the side, and all of the samurai and swordsmen in the room, you see them like slowly kind of grab the handle of their katana or kind of make their way across their body, and the priests are oblivious to it, and Yasuke is the only one that like eyes the room, and you see him tense up, and Nobunaga sees that and immediately like stands down as samurai and has the priests leave and essentially takes Yasuke in. The priest brought this chair for him as like a present for him allowing safe passage, but instead he's like, I want Yasuke. He's got a warrior spirit. I want to train him. So he gets trained, and then it flashes forward 6 months, and that's when you do the siege to open the game. So then once you unlock Yasuke, you go back to fill in that 6 months of like where he goes to train, what kind of like, how grueling was it? The other students obviously picked on him, and it's kind of funny how their interpretation of how Japan interacts with a black man, because especially at that time, 98% have never seen, a black man before. So you get these conversation pieces where it's like, it's kind of funny. One of them's like, has your skin always been that? Or have you always had that complexion?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. And they're like trying to unlock his backstory of how he came to be in Japan. So that's kind of what I'm going through now. And like I said, his character is very interesting. So that's enough about the 2 characters. So the world itself is it's levels, kind of like how I think Origins introduced that, of where higher level enemies, where if you get too high of a level, you're going to be one-shot kill, and you slowly progress to the world. It's a very beautifully designed open world game. I mean, Feudal Japan is just a gorgeous setting in general. I do think Ghosts took the cake on that,
Mm-hmm.
where it seems if you combine the two characters, you would get Jin from Ghosts.
Yeah.
Because instead of having, like, for example, Jin had 4 sword styles, Yasuke has different weapons he can. So does Naue, but Yasuke's are like long katana. I don't know the names of them, like the big freaking club. You get a rifle, you get and you can only have 2 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
The spear with the knife on the end of it, and I think that's it. Where Naue is just, I think she has 3 weapons. Oh, you get a bow and arrow with Yasuke. Naue is just a katana, a short knife. It plays more like a rogue where the hits are fast but don't do as much damage. And the sword on a stick. Or not on a stick, on a chain. I'm butchering what these are all called.
I think
But
that's called a stickle.
a stickle, thank you. So that's what she uses, and they just play very differently. So like Jin had, his bow and arrow and all this. So did they're similar in those regards, like smoke bombs, kunai,
Yeah.
all that. But I do think they're just set pieces in Ghosts where you're walking through a field and everything's like blowing, and it's really amazing to look at. And you kind of get lost in it. Where Shadows doesn't have that as much, and so far, I will say, like, I'm glad I bought it new. I mean, I would have loved to have had a discount, but I didn't want to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't regret buying it. I think it's a great game. I think it is, I can safely say, I think it's top 3 Assassin's Creed games. And I'm comparing it to other Assassin's Creed games. I think it's a very good game. And I do think it's the success that Ubisoft needed. Because I think if this failed, because while they don't have as much of the market share as people would think for gaming compared to other companies. They do have some of the most employees out of any gaming company because they're just so spread. I mean, Ubisoft Montreal, Ubisoft Barcelona, right? They're like just so
Yeah.
spread out that I think if this game failed, there would have been a lot of layoffs to try and compensate for the financial loss.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying not to ramble too long because I can kind of interdict along the way some of the other stuff I saw. But I'm curious what your outlook on the game was.
So I have multiple different outlooks on the game. So I don't think the game's a failure because, like I said, I'm still gonna enjoy it for what it is, and I don't think it's a horrible game. But I personally don't think it's anything that's like, to me, that's like a huge standout. Like, Ubisoft can do some amazing things if they really, really, truly want to. And like, for example, like Siege, there was no game in this planet that played like Rainbow Six Siege, and Rainbow Six Siege was a mega success. For Honor, till this day, For Honor was the first to ever do a fighting game in the way that it did with the knights and Vikings and samurais. I still play For Honor to this day. Like, I have over 2,000 hours in For Honor. Like, that's how much I love this game. Ubisoft can do some things that are truly imaginable. And I think like this Assassin's Creed game could be so much more if they just put their thinking caps on and try to come up with, not to say come up with a completely different formula, but to come up with a different like stem of Assassin's Creed. Like, the game is probably going to be the better of the group, of the better of the Assassin's Creed. Like, coming out in 2024, 25, I will hope so. Like, Assassin's Creed has a huge fan base, for one. So therefore, like, even if the game, let's say, is mid, which I personally think it is, it's still going to sell great. It sold like, what do you say? It was like 1.2 or 2 million or something
They
like
had
that?
like 2 million players so
Like
far.
2 million
Yeah.
players. Okay, so like, I would say that's a success. But Dragon Veilguard sold the same amount, and that was an absolute failure of a game. Like, if you want to get the numbers and, all of this stuff, then yes, it was a success. But if you truly want to make something that the fans can remember and be like, wow, that was an amazing game, I think they missed the bar. I'm not gonna say it was a failure, but I think they missed the bar because it's literally almost the same thing. It's just more refined, more polished, and it's safe in some ways. Because I think having the Black Samurai was not a safe move, but the game was, I think, ultimately safe. And like, if it keeps selling, that's great. But even Call of Duty 6, for example, Black Ops 6, that sell over 500 million copies, and that game wasn't a success. It's the same thing. It's nothing new. It is nothing innovative. And people are going to keep buying things like this because they want this. There's no other reasoning behind it. It's not even a logical reason. People are going to keep buying it, and then people are going to complain about it. Like, oh, this is the same Call of Duty. Yeah, but you keep buying it. So, like, I don't think the game was an overall success, in my opinion, so far. I have some other numbers I want to read off. Like, for example, Metacritic gives it like a 81, which is really good. But that was out of 71 people. You go look at the users, they got a 5.9 out of over 2,000 people. Resident Evil, in the same light, had got a horrible rating. It had got a 60, it was like a 67 review on Metacritic. But guess what? Resident Evil 6 was like a huge hit with the fans. So it really just depends on who are they targeting. If they want to target the people to get money, then sure, it's a success. But if you want to target your fans and give them something to remember, I don't think it was. Like, it's just not.
I think that for this, though, I think this is going to be a high point. Like, they definitely took risks, like you said, with a Black Samurai. I know, Pete, that rubbed people the wrong way. After playing the game, I do like the dimensionality of what he brings. Like, it's just such a different story. And like, for those who are like, oh, we would have liked, like, a Japanese, male, but like, you still have the Japanese female, who I think is the not as good of a character, just because of the whole revenge plot point, and it's just, she sounds whiny after a while. That's one thing. The voice acting is not great, except for Yasuke I think is good, but I don't think I don't think that voice actor did a good job. So that's a con for me.
So, like, with this billion-dollar company, you couldn't have the process to be like, you know what, this voice acting isn't good enough. But no, they kept doing it because they didn't want to spend more money. That's literally what it comes down to. They could have easily hired a better voice actor, or, do something else, but they didn't do it because they just want to milk money out of people. I truly, wholeheartedly believe this, and this is why I'm taking a stand on this game. The game is a single player game. It's a $70 game, which I think $70 for video games is starting to creep up there, but so be it. But they still have the audacity to put a battle pass in a game. And this is this is where, like, I think Ubisoft is not hitting the mark for me. You have the audacity to put a battle pass in a $70 game that has mediocre voice acting, something that you cannot get around. It is going to be in your face the entire time. All right, I get it if you go to like the edges of the map or some weird part of the map that they're not expecting you to go to, and it might not be the best, but it's the voice acting. You cannot hide that. It's in your face, and they still didn't care, and they thought, you know what, this is good. It's okay. If this wants to be an okay game, then that's where it is. It's an okay game, and I'm still gonna play the game, and I'm most likely gonna really enjoy it because I just love Assassin's Creed. But I'm gonna wait until it goes on sale because I'm not paying $70 for a single player game that has mediocre voice acting that they can't hide, and they have a battle pass in the game.
So what
Like,
would you
you're
give
already,
this game on a scale of 1 to 10? From, like, for what
I,
what would you give it?
I would give it a 6 or a 5. I think it's it's going to be a good game. And I think reviewers nowadays, 8 is like a really, really good game. But nowadays, 8 is like okay to people. And I just think that's just false, because it's a very okay game, and that's fine. And I'm not even gonna get into the part of, like, yes, this is 2 million something, like, people purchased the game or something, but how many of those people actually purchased the game? Is it people from the Ubisoft Game Pass, or is it people that actually went out and purchased it? I don't know. I just think sometimes companies, this is not just a Ubisoft game, this is just as a gaming company in general, they like to inflate numbers and stuff. But realistically, why do we care about the numbers? Like Monster Hunter Wild, for example, they're not talking about their numbers because you know why? They know their fans are going to play the game because of the work that they put into the game, the small, stupid details that comes into it. No company that truly wants to be great at their craft is going to talk about and push numbers in people's faces. It's just no. So, but I think the game is like a 7, not 7, a 6. And the 6 is like me being generous and stuff.
I think I would give it like an 7 or an 8, more towards leaning towards an 8, because I've 20 hours in it. I do thoroughly enjoy it, and I see I base my success in games, or like if a game was worth it, rather, on how many hours I put into it, right? And if I put, looking at my Steam games right now, if I put, let's say, we'll say what I paid for it. So if I put over 70 hours in this game, I'll be happy. $1 an hour. Because if I'm looking at like my top, which no one's gonna like this game, but my top game like on Steam is Gotham Knights, and I have 113 hours in it. I like that game a lot. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And then we have, I have to say my top 3, Hogwarts Legacy, 100 hours, and then Red Dead Redemption was 78. But Red Dead I've played on Xbox, PlayStation. I've played this game like 3 times. Like amazing game.
Mm-hmm.
But
I just think the game.
I think I'll get my money's worth out of it.
And that's good, like I hope everyone get their money's worth out of the game. Like I don't want people to go buy games and feel ripped off because that's just not who I am. But what I'm saying is that like I just can't keep supporting a company that can truly do great and can like knock it out the park. Like I don't have that a lot of time on this world. I don't want to play an okay game all the time when I only have so much time in this world, especially whenever I become a dad. Well, I am a dad, but whenever
you're a cat dad.
Yeah, like it's just like, it's just whenever I get time to play the game from school and stuff like that, I want to play a game that's truly going to captivate me. I don't want to play a game that's just going to be like, I like it, but I'm just checking off the boxes. So I'm just mindlessly doing stuff. And that's how Assassin's Creed feels to me right now. It's been the same formula for over 10 years and nothing's changed. And like I said, I'm pretty sure it's going to sell great because the fans want it and they want it to be great. And they're going to play it anyway. Like me, I'm going to still play it. But, looking at the stuff that they've created and some of the amazing projects that they've done, like, if you want to talk to me about these numbers and stuff, so be it, then fine. Just take a fortnight spent to it. Just spend money. Mindlessly spend money on all of this stuff. Mindlessly buy our stuff because we know you're going to. Then, yeah, it would be a success. But if you truly want something to just resonate with the fans and give people something, a breath of fresh air, that's something different, like Baldur's Gate 3. Like, for example, I've never played a Dungeons and Dragons game in my entire life. And then when Baldur's Gate 3 came out, it was so good that I decided to give it a shot. And I loved it. And that is like making something different. That is making something refreshing, which is this company is only worth $100 million, but Ubisoft, this multi-billion-dollar company, can't get it together and make something that's going to be an absolute marvel. And that's something that they can do. So, like, I don't know. I think it's going to be I think it's a good game, but it could be so much more.
I think my thing with this game is that this this is a step in the right direction, because I feel like the map in Odyssey was too big. Odyssey was decent. Valhalla didn't blow me away really too much. I think that these Assassin's Creed games are it's too big of a world. Like, it's too many side quests, like all this like just random filler. And I think that if they really stripped it and put a decent story together, because I think the gameplay is good for this game. I think that the options they give you are very custom to how one would want to play the game. For example, you can, like, when you start the game, you can decide whether you want, like, when you start a quest, it's basically how much you want to explore, if that's your thing. Do you want the quest to be marked on the map, or do you want them to, like, roughly tell you where to look? so that you go and explore. Like, oh, they're in this village at the southeast behind a bar, like behind a sake house drinking. Like, and then you're like, okay, then I'll just go. It's not like it's hard to find, but I'm like, nah, I don't want to waste time doing that. I want to do the quests or do the side quests. So, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a good game. I think it's a success so far. I'm curious to see where it goes. When you mentioned the battle pass, I was like, I didn't even know about the battle pass. Ubisoft does for their games, which I do like. They have the Ubisoft Connect store, so if I play one game and like do challenges or whatever achievements and earn in-game currency, then I can spend that on like Ezio's outfit in Valhalla, or this gun skin and Siege. Like, I do appreciate that connectivity of it all.
Yeah. The connectivity is great, but like losing your games because you didn't play it in a while is also not great as well. So
Yeah.
like I just I love Ubisoft, but I hate them at the same time. So like it's just like uh. So the game, I think the game is like for anyone who's listening. I think the game's going to be really good. If you go into it with a clear head, with no expectations, don't let any YouTuber out there sprout any of this woke stuff into your head. Go into the game with a clear mind and no expectations. I think it'd be a good game. But when you have people like me who has very high expectations because they just love Ubisoft as a whole and play almost all of the Ubisoft games, it could be a bit of a letdown, like a real letdown. So I would say my best advice is to play the game, take it for what it is, and enjoy the story for what it is. But like, if you're someone who wants something that's a little more, that feels more worth your $70, because $70 is a lot to get a game, then I would suggest, wait until the game goes on sale, then get it, because like it is literally the same formula as all of the other Assassin's Creed games, but it has a little bit more ice in here and there that can, mix it up a bit with like the different assassins that you can use. But
So here's just where I land, kind of to put a bow on it. This is where I land. I think, yes, Shadows is a win. I think it delivered on the fantasy so many players have wanted, and the majority of the community seems happy with it. But there's an undercurrent of concern, and like you were saying, the formula is starting to feel predictable, which I agree with that. And fans are asking kind of what's next? Can Ubisoft innovate, or are we heading towards burnout territory? I'm really wanting something set, because the closest to the present we've gotten is in Syndicate. There was like this side character that was around on World War II or World War One, and you like scaled. I think it was a bridge. You scaled I think it's the London Bridge. You scaled the London Bridge and talked to Winston Churchill. So I'd be very curious if they could come to something more recent than all of that, the Industrial Revolution, and I think maybe I'm thinking the Assassin's Creed for the Revolutionary War. So late 1700s is probably the most recent as far as timelines. But I mean, for now, if you love big, beautiful open worlds, samurai versus shinobi action, and the signature blend Assassin's Creed does with the blend of history and fiction, then I think this game is worth your time. But we'd love to know what you think. Did Assassin's Creed Shadows hit the mark for you, or are you ready for Ubisoft to change things up? Hit us up on socials or drop your thoughts wherever you're listening. That's it for today's episode of Two Dads, One Controller. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow gamers. Until next time, stay stealthy out there.